These are the lucky ones. I'm so glad everyone else is leaving because I've got a lot of money and you guys have a lot of companies, and usually that's been a recipe for success. At Oracle, since 2013 or 15, or 2005, we've done 120 some acquisitions for $75 billion. So if you're not interested in cash, you better leave now. If you're interested in trying to sell businesses to us, the purpose of my presentation today was really to sell you on why Oracle. I think if you go back through the history of the last 40 years for our existence, we have been a buyer of first choice. And mainly I'd say it's because the enterprise technology industry went through evolutions. You think about mainframes to internet or to client server to internet architectures. The technology evolved, but the business model behind it stayed the same. And the way I always like to describe it is, it was the notion that in the on-premise world, we were here if you started failing. And by that I mean we sold technologies to companies, and companies took it, put it behind their firewall, and God knows what they did with it. They connected it to storage and servers, and they connected to third-party components, and they may have even changed the code themselves. And by the time they got done, which we had nothing to do with, they called us up and said, "Hey, it's not working." And we're like, "Oh, well, what'd you do to it?" Right? So it was this old notion, can you please recreate the problem? And it was very frustrating for customers because their belief was it was Oracle's problem, but obviously there was a lot of vendors involved in that situation. So and how we sold in the on-premise world never changed. It was the idea of selling upfront large dollar value transactions. Again, try to recoup as much money as possible up front, and then over time, if you did have a problem, we'd be here and we'd do our best. The cloud comes along, and all of a sudden you have what I call a revolution. And by that I mean not only did the technology change, but the entire business model changed. So you went from this idea of are you failing to really the question in the cloud world is are you succeeding? And why do you ask that question? Because the reality is now I don't get all that upfront dollars, right? I'm selling you a subscription. You're renewing it on an annual or a multi-year basis. And if it doesn't work well, or you don't deploy it and get utilization from it, you go elsewhere, right? There's a lot more alternatives today than there ever was. And so it was funny because when we went through the process of making acquisitions in the on-premise world, they were easy to integrate. I mean, the idea was we got new technology, we snapped it in, and we ran it just like you were always part of Oracle, which was we didn't care how your business model worked. You did it the Oracle way. That was easy. That way we didn't need all those redundant extra costs, the overlapping back offices, et cetera, and we could immediately get and realize synergies from that, and then go to the customer and offer a lot more value by having pre-integrated these components out of the box. Then all of a sudden this cloud thing came along, and we started making some early acquisitions because as we were building our own cloud technologies at Oracle, the idea was that we would augment it through acquisitions because we could help accelerate the process. And lo and behold, every time I went and looked at a new company, they had a different operating model, like how they sold to the customer, hunter-farmer, who got paid on what a customer success manager meant. I mean, all these roles and responsibilities were all new in the cloud world, but more importantly, they varied. Every company sort of did it differently. And in our early days, in the wisdom of Oracle, of course, we said, who cares how you run it? We're going to run it the Oracle way. And the issue is we had an organization that had been built up with the idea of taking that round peg and slamming it into the round hole. It worked well until you got the square peg and you try to jam it into the round hole, and things didn't work so well. So early on in those first few years, we spent a lot of time understanding the differences between these operating models, and as a result of it, we realized we had to change as a company. We had to evolve our operating model in order to be successful. And so the last few years at Oracle, I spent time internally on our own transformation so that we could optimally serve a customer from the standpoint of, are you succeeding, as opposed to a company that had been built for 40 years around this idea, are you failing, right? And it was very interesting to walk around because there were a lot of folks at Oracle who were like, well, that's not how we do it, you know. And there was a lot of resistance to change because, you know, because culturally companies go through this process of building up these ideas. So we spent a lot of time starting with, first, let's admit we have a problem, right? So we would go through and identify where was it there were differences in how we had to operate versus how we did operate, and make sure we admitted that change is required. And the second thing was through Larry Ellison, Safra Katz, and Mark Hurd, the idea is now let's figure out what the executive sponsorship is. The idea is if your leaders aren't advocating for change, you'll never get there. And then the third is we had to create a sense of urgency, which is if we don't make these adjustments, we'll never get there. And so as a result, we've been reinventing at Oracle how we do things. A good example is when you go and contract with Oracle versus any other technology vendor. You know, historically, the idea is you would lawyer up, you know, you as a customer, you'd lawyer up, and Oracle would lawyer up, and we'd serve you a very seller-friendly document from a contract standpoint. You as a buyer would then go get your lawyers and come up with your own buyer-friendly version, and you'd spend months negotiating over all of these terms and conditions in order to get access to the technology which your business people wanted to get access to. Months go by, right, and you finally get done. And here you are, you've lost time to value because there's a separation between your need and when you can get it fulfilled. And worse than that, all these people beat the crap out of each other, and for what reason? I mean, how many of you have ever gone back in a vendor contract from a technology standpoint and actually had to pull out the terms and say, wait a second, this is what it says? The reality is that the terms and conditions of these contracts barely, if ever, get put into use. So spending all that time, paying for all these resources to negotiate something that really doesn't come to play in almost every case, maybe it made sense when you're selling a $20 million transaction, but when you move to the cloud, where the idea is small dollar value, large transactions, rapid time to value, you know, speed and ease of use, all of these concepts, they can't be done in those worlds. So Oracle went, and one of the reinventions we did was we called the accelerated buying experience, which is we went and took our configure price quote cloud, a business cloud from a contracting perspective, and we went and looked at thousands of cloud contracts that we had inherited and had also consummated. And we said, what are all the common terms? Put all those common terms into this contract and empower the reps to pick and choose with the customer so you can immediately give them what they want in addition to the products and services they're trying to purchase. Then through the system automatically give them the contract so that no one has to manually intervene. You don't have to call lawyers and get them involved, et cetera. And the buyer gets it in an email, looks at it and confirms that's what they ordered, and they click to accept it. And all of a sudden you went from months of contracting to literally hours and days in many cases. And we've had this accelerated buying experience in place for almost a year, and we've sold multi-million-dollar contracts under the scenario. The only purpose I'm saying is that's what's going on at Oracle. We are transforming how we are. So we've always been the company that focuses on innovation. We love your businesses. We'd love to learn more about them. We're constantly trying to augment our organic innovation with acquisitions. But I also want to leave you with this notion that we're also reinventing how we do business. We're going from trying to be best technology, really hard to do business with, to best technology, best company to do business with, and reinvent what that means. And that enables us to sell faster, to then service quicker, and then get to that renewal and sell more to our to customers that come in the door. And it's been a sea change for us at Oracle, but we're all committed to that ideology, because if you go back and as I think everybody knows, when you think about old tech titans versus new tech titans, if you're an old one and you don't reinvent your business models like that, and you don't go back and be willing to change, we've seen several companies that obviously over time have not made it through these crossing the chasms, not just from a technology perspective, but really from a business perspective. So we're obviously anxious to continue to grow our cloud business. It's now in the multi-billion dollars, and we're always looking for great new ideas. but we also want you to be aware that part of it is that then we can go make these things really successful as well. And so from that, I'll end and appreciate the time and look forward to hearing your ideas.